Hello and welcome back to Technopoverty. It is a special late night Tuesday edition. We're going to be a bit chill. We're going to go back to Medal of Honor Underground, which I picked up because we beat Medal of Honor while discussing Norman Spinrad's The Iron Dream. For those of you who aren't usual or typical with us, if you're just joining us for the first time, say, Technopoverty is a project where we combine books with video games, bounce the two off each other with you in the chat, and just see what conversation that makes. Typically, we're playing Conscript while reading All Quiet on the Western Front, but I kind of want to keep All Quiet on the Western Front constrained to Conscript. I don't want to split a book up across too many games on too many days with too many streams. And you know what? The Tuesday streams, I think from here on out, they might be a bit more chill. We'll see as the summer scramble sets in what we think about that. But for now, we're going to get back into Medal of Honor Underground. We're going to watch some YouTube essays I think are relevant to what we've been doing here with the Toy Soldiers of Spring. Once again, if you're new here, for Spring, we've been covering a lot of military fiction, a lot of military games, talking about concepts of war and nationalism and masculinity, you know? There are a lot of truncheons going on The Iron Dream, but you know what? Let's just fire up the game and get to it. We're going to get into the groove of Underground before going right to the video essays. For those of you joining us tonight, I see Ja here. I see 3-2. Thank ya. We're going to be cozy, gang. We're going to learn a bit about Call of Duty and the CIA. It's going to be an essay-filled night, I'll put it that way. Let me make sure I get the game up here and actually... Yeah. Between Conscript and this, the volumes are way different, so let me know if Medal of Honor is too loud. It's going to be a little low. I'm going to, at some point, pull up the YouTube. Also, Ja, truth be told, I have not read further in All Quiet on the Western Front since last session, so I have no new knowledge to even provide if I wanted to. Just again refreshed by its sense of perspective and clear, sober understanding that war sucks. All right, let's see, where were we in Underground? If I remember correctly, I was doing some sort of photography mission, which kudos for them for going once again for the, hey, what can we do other than fire off a gun? While it feels less involved than the first game's use of sneaking around with a secret badge, you know, undercover so far, it's easier. This game's nicer. I haven't hit like a game over state in the same frustrating way Jacob and I got caught in the first game, which... Again, interesting, no upfront difficulty switch. What up, L-Man? L-Man, eventually at some point in the stream, we're going to just start slamming video essays. They're pretty much the ones we shared in the Discord earlier today. There's a new Maggie Mae Fish I'm curious about. There's one 3-2 shared about how the CIA was involved with Call of Duty. There's some writing on games stuff that came out recently I'm very curious about as well because it was on Freedom Fighters, a game I know Jacob has been aching to play. But let's read our briefing first. What lies in Gnosis? Terrific work, Manon. That supply schedule revealed an unusually large amount of munitions being diverted to, of all places, an archaeological dig. Given all we have, this is our best lead yet. The time to strike is now. We've heard that troops have been diverted from this location to restore order to Heraklion, allowing us excellent opportunity to determine if this dig is indeed cover for their artillery emplacements. Reprising my role as a home front propaganda photographer. Let's go. I was enjoying that you could take pictures of the dudes and they would strike poses when you took pictures of them. That was a nice little detail. They don't have to have that in the game, but they considered it. Very nice and human. Using your newly acquired credentials, make your way through the Palace of Gnosis under the guise you're interested in their work. while keeping a sharp eye out for hidden artillery. Don't expect you to have much trouble with the guards posted there. They're most likely bored out of their minds, but remain cautious nonetheless. As you search the ruins, locate and eliminate the archaeologists. Though the research is baseless, it seems a terrible injustice to allow them to face history in the name of the Reich. Oh, and if the opportunity presents itself, recover some of the relics they're creating and send home. Good luck. Thank you, sir. I do recall last session being impressed with the scoring of this game, in particular over the first. There's already a sense of character in, like, Manon having a story. I wonder how much that is sexism, in the sense that the first guy was such a blank slate, no feelings Joe, whereas Manon seems more...
How do I look?
Cool, alright. Look at these ruins.
Nice to meet you. Where else have you visited? I expected someone else.
Alright, let's see if I remember how to do these controls and if I can take this guy out silently. No one saw that. Excellent. I'm a killer queen. Dynamite with a laser beam. Let's keep looking for other dudes first. I think I need a passport or a special pass for that.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Actually, gang, I made the same mistake I made the other day. I did not plug my laptop in. I'm going to run for the charger in a moment. Maybe the first game over I get, because I think my battery's pretty good.
Proof of identification? Be my guest.
Thank you. Glad we could clear that up.
I assume someone approved this. I assume someone approved this. I assume someone approved this.
Are they suspicious? What I do? What did I do? Why? Damn it. Where is the alarm? I'm out of ammo. Alright, I'm gonna go get that cord. I'm gonna throw up the break time bumper. Be right back. Technical difficulties, please stand by. 3-2, I skimmed the Palantir Manifesto, but I was not... It wasn't for research for an article or anything, so it wasn't anything I felt pertinent to commit to memory. It was just a lot of blathering. I'm going to pin that article because I might circle back around to it if the videos start boring me. Thanks for your contribution. CIAA Gaming. CIAAA Gaming, yes. Nice to hear from you, Wizworld. The Tuesday show has become a bit slippery and improvisational, but we have been reading All Quiet on the Western Front for the main days, and boy howdy, what a work. Alright, I'm just a photographer is all. Don't mind me. But yeah, there's an essay that was served up on the Discord just talking about Call of Duty being, you know, in part a project backed by the CIA. We're gonna give that a rip in a few.
I assume someone approved this.
Oh, these guys always get me. What did you do? What relic am I taking? Oh, okay. Okay. Ancient treasures of Greece. What's up, a ghost bro? Yeah, and to Ghost Bro, that is rooted in basically in the first one. Spielberg wanted to not make it Doom, and the project was going to be aborted twice at some points because they thought they were being too exploitative and they wanted to like not just make it an arcade shooter. The first game had a very difficult sneaking around a submarine with the passport thing.
I assume someone approved this.
Papers, please. What is the reason for your visit?
For your photos, dude. Yeah. I'm gonna go the other way. But, so, you know, Underground being the second one is a much nicer game. Again, Jacob and I mentioned throughout the first game, there was no, like, difficulty switch. It was a pretty, just, like, at standard, obstinate game in its design. They really wanted you to pay attention and read the levels to get things done. Which means it's very hard, but like the kind of meticulousness it's demanding is there so that it slows you down and actually makes you look at the thing. It's interesting. It's got a narrative tug and pull to its mechanics that's a bit more sophisticated, or holds up a bit better than, say, like GoldenEye, in my opinion. Although, again, because GoldenEye is not trying to be as, like, narratively coherent and stoic, it has the wackier kind of set of play mechanics, which is why the multiplayer is so fun. Hey, dude. Nice to meet you, too. I feel like a dude at the beginning of the movie Sorcerer whenever I pull off the silent snipe, like the photographer, boom bam. Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Where else have you visited?
Is it messed up that I actually take their picture before doing it repeatedly? Like, it helps me line up the crosshair just right, but it also feels like very sociopathic. Okay, was there a relic over here? With the way the Tuesday's a bit of a fallback day, I might just go back to the source and play GoldenEye because I always found it a bit too archaic to be nostalgic. But Spielberg did see his kid playing GoldenEye, and that gave him the idea for Medal of Honor, so I want to kind of trace the grandfather gene back, you know? If we're going to be exploring Nazis, we might as well get some eugenics in there. Check out the breeding. Any relics over here I need to take? Nope, just missiles. Just missiles.
Papers, please. What is the reason for your visit?
Intruder!
Oh man. No, you don't. Oh, oh, oh. I already got the dude in here. All right.
I assume someone approved this. Papers, please.
Yeah, double. And the alarm was right there. Scary. Intense.
Your identification. Make us look good.
Your papers, please. Your papers are sufficient.
There's no scientist in here.
Proof of identification?
Where else have you
Proof
visited?
of identification?
Right here.
Someone approved this.
All right. It's not realistic, but it's tense. It's video games. Good game
I
feel.
assume someone approved this.
Just been practicing my quick draw. I do want to point out too, the control scheme I'm using is just the actual intended control scheme. I mean, it's configuration 4, but it's the default one. I didn't remap the controls for a twin stick or anything like that. Surprisingly tangible and cogent and modern in comparison to, you know, I mentioned GoldenEye earlier, which was on an N64 controller. It really had it figured out. Yeah, nice to meet you.
Someone older.
Am I the baddies? Is this like Army of Shadows, where I'm just wondering at what cost to my own personhood resisting is, but also how inhuman the Nazis are and how resisting is the only way? Oh. My hubris got me a bunch of lead, although I found the bunker. Destroy bunker supplies, all right. Yeah, I know. So that's the exit, that's no good. Yes, all of this shit belongs in the museum. It was the culmination of... the culmination of the first game, the second to last mission, was saving a bunch of art before the final mission, which was just a nice decorative set piece where you stop a rocket from going off, or you sabotage a rocket launch. Alright, let's go back to having the camera out, just in case. So I'm missing some archaeology. Oh yeah, I didn't go down this way. Oh, hi, buddy. Alright. I need the propaganda report, and I need to destroy those bunker supplies, wherever they are.
Proof of identification?
They all fall so dramatically. That's been such a consistently good thing about these games. Peter Parker origins sure is dark, bitten by a radioactive Nazi spider. Daily Bugle here, smile for the camera. You know, the thing is, J. Jonah Jameson is willing to hire an ex-con. He just doesn't like that Spider-Man goes outside the system. And, I mean, I don't think that makes him right. I just think there are aspects of that character that got flanderized over time, and him and Robbie Robertson are some of my favorite, like, supporting characters in a serial adventure. Robbie Robertson is so good, y'all. If Tuesday's just gonna be a rambling night, why don't we talk about Tombstone? Tombstone's a very good Spider-Man villain. Because he doesn't start as a Spider-Man villain, he's a Robbie Robertson villain who becomes a Spider-Man villain. I'm not even gonna, yeah, all the innuendo's gone. Got that propaganda report. Now I just need to destroy those bunker supplies, all right. Do I just blow up the rockets? Like these munitions. Okay, let's see, I think this is it. Oh, I don't, that belonged in a museum. I think I need to go back and get those other munitions boxes. This is a new type of conundrum, I feel. I don't think there was anything quite this esoteric or kind of vague. Or did I just misread the letter earlier? Maybe I was just not reading. There's like a whole wing over here I haven't. There we go. Nothing more. Alright, let's get out of this dusty, dusty tomb. Be sure to take a photo of the bull on the way out. I wonder, you can't really review your pictures or anything. I don't think there's a bank. I didn't see anything like that in the options. All right, what's next? Now, before we watch the CIA video, there is an essay on the game Freedom Fighters I was curious about by the channel Writing on Games. We're going to kick it off with that. We're going to start with the light stuff, and then we'll get into the CIA tinfoil, and then I forget what I have queued up after that, but we will see. Yeah, Ja. Oh man. So, Gary Conway recently passed away, as did, not Kurt Busiek, DeMatteis. But there was a republication recently of the DeMatteis Busiek, I believe it's Busiek DeMatteis, Web of Spider-Man. I mean, not Web of Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man. There was an omnibus that came out last August that captures that whole run. And yeah, kind of, I'm trying to figure out how to coherently explain how you need to simultaneously juggle Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, Web of Spider-Man, and The Amazing Spider-Man, which were 3 separate books published that would volley stories off of each other, because the Tombstone stuff that happens starts up around Peter Parker, Spectacular Spider-Man, like 140, if I remember right. And then it kind of volleys between there and Web of Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man. But Tombstone's a great villain. He was a hardcore kid, Ja. What can you say? Alright, I'm going to fire up that Writing on Games video. Let's get to it, gang.
You can't go far on the games internet nowadays without coming across all sorts of talk about which games from the past need to be brought back in the form of remakes. Nowadays, the excitement at even the possibility that a company might mention an old game often eclipses what fervor might exist for those newer ideas. Especially when times are so tough, people love to look back at what brought them joy in their youth, and people seem to want remakes of absolutely anything. And honestly, one of the stranger examples of this, as I see it, is 2003's Freedom Fighters, a game I'm frequently seeing listed as a forgotten gem that people are desperate to have brought into the modern era. Putting the straight re-release on PC a few years back to the side, on its face, this is an understandable impulse. That grey on red on white cover, with the grit etched onto the faces of its characters, is, to me, somewhat iconic in the PS2 library. I played through this game dozens of times back in the day. I get those exact same nostalgic pangs when I think back on the time I spent with it. Hazy memories of blocky, Hitman-style character designs. Despite the game's grim setting, those memories are as comfortably fuzzy as the New York sunrises your makeshift crew
I just want to point out that this note says, it appears this part of the base is in the labyrinth where the legend tells us Theseus slew the Minotaur. Leave it to the Germans to set up shop here. Oh, the previous part of this note also said, ditch the camera, go hog on guns, and then they're like, you're in the Minotaur's Labyrinth. So, what a wacky turn of things. Let's continue on with this excellent video.
Repeatedly battle under. And it was exactly
Am I just
this
saying that because
nostalgia
writing on
that
games
led
has
to
a
me
smooth
picking it up
voice?
again.
Maybe.
And as enjoyable an action game as it still is, as interesting as its ideas are, on multiple levels, I really don't know how you'd remake something like this nowadays. Everything about its structure, and indeed its politics, seems somewhat alien to modern sensibilities. For one, it's a remarkably simple game. Of course, in some ways this certainly adds to its charm rather than detracts from it, but at its core, Freedom Fighters is an action game made by a team whose prior work features gunplay awkward enough to be utilised as a last resort, a kind of failure of intended play, and that here becomes the main event. Don't get me wrong, it's hardly anywhere near as finicky as the Hitman combat. Freedom Fighters is perfectly functional in its intended purpose. It is, however, very little more than that. Indeed, the entire thing hinges on a gimmick that felt pretty revelatory in an era where functional was the main descriptor you could apply to any number of big-name action titles, but nowadays feels more than a little quaint. The ability to round up comrades as your notoriety grows in the fight against the Russians certainly lends a mechanical weight to the game's premise, allowing you to see and feel to a certain extent how your actions are affecting the world around you. For its time, it represents a neat marriage of mechanics and story. It's just that with a central conceit that novel, it's a little shocking how, well, little of that story there is. I'm not talking about the story itself being insubstantial, although it certainly isn't a masterpiece by any means. Part of the reason a remake of this game seems like an odd thing to ask for is that it would represent a whole lot of time and effort put into a thing that takes a few brief hours to beat. It really is over and done with in a flash, and what is there is perhaps slightly insubstantial, showing immense potential, but never seeming to fully utilise what it's got. In line with its mechanical predecessors, for example, there's a sense at least of non-linearity in mission structure here. Hitman allows you to approach a target in pretty much any way you feel, while Freedom Fighters, in its attempt to centre you as strategist as much as action hero, makes out as if you have control over which areas of a map you're going to focus on first, chipping away at an overall main objective. The issue is that, well, there still exists a certain way in which things need to be done a lot of the time. You might come across some fuel canisters that have to be blown up in order to take out a sniper nest at the top. Of course, however, you can't just use any explosive on it, and so, after wasting a bunch of grenades and ammo, you head via the game's sewer system to the bit at which you find C4, and then head all the way back. It just feels a little more rigid than it perhaps lets on. But you know, for as insubstantial as its campaign may seem, there is indeed a vibe to it. Free of the modern need to aim down sights, there's something rather delightful about screaming your way through what feels like Arctic tundra and the sun-kissed, ravaged remnants of the America that was, vaguely pointing in the direction of enemies and holding the trigger down until no bullets remain. When you mow down as many enemies as you do here, it's not hard to see why your character develops such a cult of personality, despite him lacking much in the way of it. I mean, his name is Chris Stone. It's hard to think of something more generic. All that aside though, even if you decided to put all the time and resources into remaking an action game that is so simplistic at its core, what you would butt up against perhaps more intensely is the dissonance associated with playing a game like this, with this story and plot, in a year where the very notion of America as an institution is in a weird, weird place. See, freedom fighters' alternate timeline, as detailed by the intro, in which the Soviets nuke Germany to end the Second World War, and the Union becomes the great world superpower, leads to a powder keg moment in which the US must fight against the now invading, overpowering Soviet force. Of course, America taking on an encroaching communist threat is nothing new in media, but freedom fighters' take on it is intriguing, if perhaps a little muddled. In media of this kind, there's this sense that the American side is fighting to preserve the sanctity of the status quo, protecting glorious capitalism from the scourge of the filthy Reds. And, in a way, similar to the surreality of navigating your home base in the sewer, a vibe cultivated in no small part due to the excellent soundtrack from Jesper Kyd, the plot of Freedom Fighters is this warped American fever dream. The power to grow and self-actualize under the banner of the Stars and Stripes lies within the hands of even this everyman plumber, interested
What do you mean
in little more than getting the
geopolitics?
job
I wanna
done
play
and
Monopoly.
maybe getting laid at the weekend. But the thing is that despite this shifting of geopolitical power, the US pre your new role as guerrilla leader doesn't look much different to what we'd recognise as real-world New York. It makes you wonder what we're actually fighting for here. For a right to self-determine within a post-9/11, post-Iraq War America in which freedoms would gradually be chipped away anyway. Look, I've had the opportunity to go to America in recent months, and I've turned it down. I probably wouldn't be in any immediate danger myself, but there's something absolutely wild about a nation that infamously speaks so fervently about freedom and the American way, also being the place where a masked secret police force is gunning down citizens in the street and rounding up countless others to put in, for all intents and purposes, concentration camps. Trans friends have spoken about having to essentially smuggle themselves into the country via more forgiving checkpoints. Families torn apart. Dissidents met with militaristic force. When you consider America's storied history with exerting the kind of power not dissimilar to this game's Soviets, it becomes difficult to imagine that an America free of Soviet tyranny would be free of other tyranny. These so-called socialists are socialist in the same way the Nazis were apparently socialist, in name only. It's an increasingly evident reality of power more generally, and with freedom fighters' painting of America as inherently the good guy, this alternate history absolving America of real-world atomic guilt, attempting to paint the American flag as this kind of radical symbol of revolution rather than what it actually is, perhaps the symbol of imperialist oppression and bloodshed to so many around the world, playing this game in the year 2026 feels downright surreal. Freedom Fighters pretty strongly says that when fascism comes for you, the only option is to fight it head on. It mechanically incentivizes the necessity of community and sees that community navigate the rubble of the old American dream, using it as cover against the onslaught of your enemies. It just also feels like the much clamoured for remake of this still very enjoyable, simple, brief little action game would inevitably butt up against the notion that its plot, as is, might similarly act as cover for the realities of how power actually works. Potentially
You just make it like a
critically
hyper-lib
incongruent
fantasy
with the
about
political
taking
age in
America
which we
back
live.
from like
And with the state of
hyper-MAGA
media
fascists.
discourse in that same moment, with morons complaining that things are too woke or political or whatever, I just do not think that's a political quagmire IO Interactive would be particularly interested in wading into. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked the video, you can help me out by liking, subscribing, becoming a channel member via the join button, and even hyping now, which apparently costs you nothing if that option is available to you. It all helps more than you know.
Ooh, direct
Massive
hit.
thanks as well to my patrons, who you can see on screen and are all getting access to exclusive, fully produced videos that aren't available here. Your continued support on patreon.com/writingongames is what allows me to keep going with the work I do on this channel.
All right. We're going to play one more short one, and then we'll play the CIA one, which is a bit longer. It's just that I see the main camera battery is about to die. Actually, we can just flip batteries and then do the CIA one. Actually, I'm gonna do that and I'm just gonna start the CIA video. So here we go, folks. The camera's gonna go out for a moment, my mic's gonna go out for a moment, but the video will keep going. Be right back.
Some of the games you grew up playing were not the safe private spaces you thought they were. Some of the people who paid for them were not the people named in the credits. Some of them weren't really games at all. They were something else entirely dressed up in a game's clothing.
This is really what has changed. We have built a panopticon, but what sits at the top of it is a computer. That computer witnesses everything we do.
Billions of dollars are spent spying on Americans, whether it's NSA or CIA or FBI.
Imagine the data you've shared and all the hours you've spent gaming. Then scale that up to 3 billion people from every country on the planet, across the US, UK, all of Europe, China, Russia, Iran.
And all this information that used to be ephemeral, right? Where were you when you were 8 years old, you know? Where'd you go after you had a bad breakup? You know, who'd you spend the night with? Who'd you call after? All this information used to be ephemeral, meaning it disappeared, right? Like the morning dew, it would be gone. No one would remember it. But now, these things are stored. Now, these things are saved.
But the real truth is, if mass surveillance were the only crime here, this would be a much shorter story. But it's also about changing the past and engineering the future, maybe permanently for all of us.
I think the military knows full well what it's doing, and I think their intent is to indoctrinate children at the youngest age.
And the twisted irony is that the very medium intelligence agencies are actively targeting is the same medium that's been warning us for decades.
What we propose to do is not to control content, but to create context.
The digital society furthers human.
What do you know? It's a Metal Gear Solid 2. It's the thing we played.
Released in November 2001, 2 months after 9/11. It describes a shadowy AI network called the Patriots that secretly filters what information reaches the public, which is not far from what the NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden revealed to the world years later. And then there's this prescient theory from Deus Ex, released in 2000.
Some people just don't understand the dangers of indiscriminate surveillance.
The need to be observed and understood was once satisfied by God. Now, we can implement the same functionality with data mining algorithms.
Since then, gaming has evolved into a new frontier for intelligence operations and interventions, like when government intelligence operatives practically invaded World of Warcraft and Second Life.
Anyone playing the game World of Warcraft as druids, death knights, warlocks could also have another designation, surveillance targets. According to newly disclosed classified documents, the NSA and its British counterpart have been infiltrating World of Warcraft, another online game called Second Life, and the Xbox Live console.
But I think that may be in a few states.
Fictitious scenario presented at a conference in which players in the game were talking about casting a fire spell, but really they were talking about setting off a bomb outside the White House.
Eventually, there were so many government agents in World of Warcraft from so many different agencies that they kept bumping into each other. The NSA had to set up a dedicated unit whose only job was to stop spies from one US agency from surveilling spies from another US agency inside.
Damn it, there was an FBI catfishing story where there was a 7-guy group and 3 of them were feds. I wish I knew more so it didn't just sound like hearsay, but I'm just gonna remember that little funny bit while playing back this video.
Inside a fantasy game. The official justification for this was counter-terrorism, and there was some truth in that. The Islamic State once revealed custom modifications of Grand Theft Auto 5 built to recruit fighters and let players reenact real terror attacks. They also built playable replicas of terrorist attacks inside Minecraft, used as recruitment material aimed at children.
Inside
and by
Minecraft.
the 2020s,
Quite
the FBI
literally
was
in
issuing
Minecraft.
formal public warnings about groups using Roblox to radicalize, groom, and in some cases coerce kids into harmful acts on camera.
There's a lot of different approaches they take, but always employing some kind of deception some kind of threat or promises of money or gifts to get that young person to open up and talk to them.
But there's also a long track history of sensitive military information getting leaked on games or by gamers that show you why the CIA wants a presence here. In April 2023, the most serious US intelligence breach in Snowden surfaced through a Minecraft Discord server called Thug Shaker Central. The leaker was a 21-year-old Massachusetts Air National Guardsman named Jack Teixeira, an intelligence analyst who'd been granted top secret clearance at the age of 19. He'd been photographing classified Pentagon documents on his family kitchen's table and posting them to roughly 40 gamers in his Discord group to win arguments and show off. He was eventually sentenced to 15 years in prison. And it wasn't a one-off. For years, players of the tank game War Thunder have been leaking genuine classified military documents to win forum arguments about how accurately their tanks are modeled in the game. That list includes the British Challenger 2 tank, the American F-15E Strike Eagle, the AH-64 Apache Technical Manual, the AV-8B Harrier, multiple Russian and Chinese main battle tanks, and a full 730-page dossier on the Eurofighter Typhoon.
In July 2021, a player was arguing about the British Challenger 2 main battle tank. To settle the disagreement, they posted basically the tank's operating manual, an action that quickly got the UK Ministry of Defence involved. Then 3 months later, a French player, claiming to be a crew member in a Leclerc Série 2 tank, in service since 1992, again got into an argument about the capabilities of their tank, my tank, your tank, and again posted part of the tank's operation manual. Come on, guys!
But what the intelligence community really wants from gaming isn't just what you did inside of it. It's what you believe when you come out. And they might just change the course of someone's life in the time between. And nowhere is this more pervasive than in the biggest video game franchise of all time. That franchise is Call of Duty. Call of Duty is the biggest video game franchise in history. It's bigger even than the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and for over 20 years, the US military has helped dictate its content. Since 2005, almost every mainline Call of Duty has employed a Pentagon military advisor. The most prolific is Hank Kiersey, a retired lieutenant colonel who served in the 82nd Airborne and taught at West Point. He stated his assistance was mostly for the purposes of gameplay and realism.
So I'm able to give the last little bit of fidelity on making sure the game is as close as possible to what you would hear, feel, sound like as a real soldier in a game.
When Modern Warfare came out, about 6 hours in, the player reaches a mission set on a road the game calls Tariq Amwat. In English, that means the highway of death.
I never played any of the Modern Warfares that Ghost Bro. The only Call of Duty I played were the first 3.
From the air, and hundreds are dead. In the game, the narrator says it was the Russians.
I did heavily enjoy the first one on debut, mostly for the single player.
The Russians bombed it
I had 56k way late into the ops and did not get into online multiplayer at the same time a lot of other friends who were on faster internet connections or...
It wasn't the Russians. On the night of February 26, 1991, US-led coalition forces
and Call of Duty 2 was very much just a multiplayer thing, so I kind of numbed to the series by the time Modern Warfare came around.
To trap everyone in between, then spent hours bombing what was left. Seymour Hersh later documented a US tank platoon opening fire on 350 surrendered unarmed Iraqi soldiers. The road earned its name because of what the coalition did to it under George H.W. Bush, and it's all publicly documented. The 2019 Modern Warfare reboot took that event, renamed the attackers, and handed it to the world as an example of what Russia was doing in the present day. This is exactly what the Colonel in Metal Gear Solid 2 described. Not just the control of content, but the control of context. And the loop goes both ways, with COD actively galvanizing interest in US Army recruitment and supporting training.
He also told me it's a great training product. I've had him link the Xboxes together, and the sergeant will actually train his teams.
I played a bit of Halo 3.
Modern Warfare game.
Call of Duty rabbit hole gets a whole lot stranger though. By
Rainbow
2014,
Six,
the
I did
franchise had
online.
released Black Ops and Black Ops 2.
PC gaming
and the
also
man
had
who
free
directed
online,
both of
whereas when
them was
Xbox
called
Live
Dave
came out, you had
Anthony.
to pay for
In
it.
September 2014, he left Activision and joined the Atlantic Council, one of Washington's most influential.
Pausing for drama.
The Wehrmacht prepared to unleash their lightning war against the West. It was over quickly.
Good. Good. We're gonna save. Is this mission? I didn't check which mission it was on the slideshow. We'll check next slideshow. I'm kind of curious. There were 7 missions in the first game. I'm wondering if there's also 7 here, or more or less. Ghost Bro, tell me a bit more what you mean by dry and clinical. What little I did play the one time my cousin brought Modern Warfare 4 over is it felt way too narrow. Like, I liked the first Call of Duty because it was still doing kind of like what Medal of Honor was doing with a sort of fidelity to history, sort of borderline edutainment, but still exploitation. Like, the sound design was really what sold Call of Duty 1 to a lot of people. The sound design and the stripped down, like, Halo 2 weapon system. I remember the campaign in Call of Duty 1 being very much stick with your squad, and they kind of, through triangulation, moved you through the levels in a very, like, Saving Private Ryan set-piece style that was pretty cinematic. And again, because of the sound design, it sounded amazing. What I remember from Modern Warfare 4 was very much the same guided sensibility, but the levels felt narrower. I don't know if 4 felt a bit more designed for console than the previous ones or something, but my sense of Call of Duty, when I think of like a Call of Duty multiplayer level or a Call of Duty level, is a very claustrophobic, narrow, kind of on one axis sort of a design. It's not a very open experience. I don't know, something about it feels very limited or constraining in a way that feels like almost a step back from sort of, I don't want to say Medal of Honor 1 and 2, but maybe some sensibilities from the 6th generation. If that sounds coherent based on maybe an hour of playing Modern Warfare 4 and like a lot of Call of Duty 1, but in middle school, so it's all a fuzz. Anyways, let's return to the main menu. Let's get briefed on the next mission, and then I will continue this CIA video. Let's catch a number. Let's see.
You've been on some tough assignments, man.
Mission
but this
4.
time we're sending
Got
you to
it.
a rather
Dark
place.
Camelot.
This, of course, is Heinrich Himmler, Reichsführer of the SS. One of the more pitiful excuses for a human being that you'll ever encounter. Did you know he was a fertilizer salesman before the war? The quality of his current product isn't much different. He spent the last few years trying to sell Hitler on the creation of an official SS nation-state within Germany, establishing a royal class among the master race. Unfortunately, Himmler and the SS seem to be getting their way. The influence of this criminal organization has continued to grow as the war has gone on, to the point that they already have many trappings of an autonomous republic, including their own economy, political system, even their own army. The Waffen-SS, and now it seems their own capital. This is Wewelsburg. It's a castle in the Paderborn region near the town of Buren that Himmler has slowly been converting into his personal palace over the last couple of years.
Nazi Draculas.
Since the SS has so much power and is responsible for so much within the Third Reich, we've decided to send you inside Wewelsburg to find out what exactly is going on in there. Steal whatever documents you can. They'll not only inform us of their current activities, but they also might prove to be valuable evidence at the inevitable War Crimes Tribunal.
Listen to
for
the
these
score, too.
Your
Really
transport
complimentary
leaves
to the
tomorrow morning
universal
at
monster they're
Be
trying to
extremely
sell. I
careful,
love
though.
this.
We're not
This
sure
is,
what you're going
this
to
is starting to
encounter,
become like an
except that it's
EC
most
Comics
likely
war
going to be
comic,
bad.
less an informational edutainment like pamphlet. I don't think it's going to go full Wolfenstein, but I do enjoy when you see an old comic serial where, like, the first cover is a boy kind of like, you know, stowing away, like lost at sea, or like taken to the ocean, seduced by the call of the sea. Just a very grounded kind of yearning for adventure sort of thing. And then you see like maybe the 7th or 8th issue where that same ship's just floating towards the edge of the world and the horizon's being drinking up by the sun, which just has an evil face on it that's consuming everything that comes towards it. And there's like squid arms coming out of the water and like pirates on board, just like, oh no, the adventure's escalated to absurd levels. I want that. I know this game's not going to deliver that, but we'll find something this summer. We will. That's what we go to Resident Evil for, right? You start in a haunted house, by the end of it you got a rocket launcher and you're fighting monsters, but you're the one with the powerful phallus. As you've been briefed on, this mission's not run-of-the-mill. The only weapon you have at your disposal is an experimental crossbow with the Big Joe. Speaking of phallus, alright. While it's absolutely silent, it's very slow to reload, so headshot, headshot, headshot. Oh, I should have checked my headshot record on the last level. I was getting pretty cocky about that. To reach the castle, you're going to have to eliminate the German forces and commandeer a cable car up the mountain. Hell yeah. To do this, you'll need to find some tools to disable the controls on the station, otherwise the car might be called back to the station before you've reached your destination. Follow the train tracks, take you to a road that leads to the cable car station and a radio building. The SS are everywhere and will quickly warn the castle if they smell any sign of trouble. Alright. Destroy the radio, cut off their line of communication. Also, we've heard the Germans have just developed a new submachine gun. Hell yeah, let's pick it up. You know, people complain that modern games tutorialize you too much, but I was literally just given 3 pages of direct instructions on how to play the level that's loading right now. Alright, I'm throwing the Call of Duty volume back down. We're resuming the moon video.
Foreign policy institutions funded by Lockheed Martin,
I'm going to rewind it a few minutes.
All publicly documented.
Just
the
so
2019 Modern Warfare reboot took that event, renamed the attackers, and handed it to the world as an example of what Russia was doing in the present day. This is exactly what the Colonel in Metal Gear Solid 2 described. Not just the control of content, but the control of context. And the loop goes both ways, with COD actively galvanizing interest in US Army recruitment and supporting training.
He also told me it's a great training product. I've had him link the Xboxes together and the sergeant will actually train his teams with the Modern Warfare game.
Call of Duty Rabbit Hole gets a whole lot stranger though. By 2014, the franchise had released Black Ops and Black Ops 2, and the man who directed both of them was called Dave Antony. In September 2014,
mute my
he left
mic while I
and
get
joined
this sorted
the Atlantic
out.
Council, one of Washington's most influential foreign policy institutions, funded by Lockheed Martin, NATO, and the US State Department. Specifically, he joined the Art of Future War project, hired to imagine new forms of terrorist attacks. For his first conference appearance, Antony presented a scenario arguing how easy it would be for terrorists to carry out a lone wolf attack on a hotel in Las Vegas.
One of my great fears, which I'm going to use as an example of this, is what would happen if this attack took place on our mainland, and I'm going to use Las Vegas as an example. It could be that you have 100 of these guys who may be on our soil right now, who may even be US citizens, who could legally walk into whatever gun store they choose, buy some assault rifles and start attacking soft targets. And that the instability that this would cause to our country would be incredible and immense.
3 years later, on October 1st, 2017, very eerily 3 years to the exact date of that talk getting posted online, a man named Stephen Paddock checked into the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Hotel in Las Vegas and opened fire on a country music festival below. 60 people were killed and 800 wounded, and it remains one of the deadliest and most mysterious mass shootings by a single perpetrator in American history. Incidentally, in that same talk, Antony explicitly names Edward Snowden as a villain.
Edward Snowden looks like the sort of head of the chess club. And, you know, one individual with technology in the wrong hands and information in the wrong hands can cause massive instability and destabilization to the country these days.
And he isn't an outlier. Activision is bristling with people who've spent careers in the national security state. COD, meanwhile, is just the tip of this iceberg. While there are many examples of games created with military consulting, which is fair from an accuracy and gameplay perspective, Full Spectrum Warrior, released on Xbox in 2004, is a more unique case. What looked like a normal retail game was actually a Pentagon training simulator with a civilian skin pulled over the top. There was a cheat code that unlocked the military training build underneath. This is the cheat code itself. When you enter
the military training mode. Alright, we're back.
This is for the US military only. There are a handful of other obvious titles that were guided by government interests too, like the Tom Clancy series, which reinforced US military dominance while stereotyping numerous other nations as their immoral enemies. But once, the opposite happened. Take SPEC OPS The Line, which halfway through forces the player to commit a white phosphorus attack on civilians that was deliberately modelled on a real US war crime in Iraq. Clearly, this did not have Pentagon support, and then it suspiciously bombed. The lead writer later said no major publisher would ever fund anything like it again. So when you stop and think about that, games have drifted a long way from their origins as a form of social critique or even political
It's
dissent.
pretty funny to me. I don't know. I'm
2000s,
thinking of
games
Spec
like
Ops.
Juice X,
Spec Ops is a
Metal
bit like
Gear
accidentally
Solid, Bioshock,
genius.
Command & Conquer Red Alert stood toe-to-toe with the best films of their era. They
Because
warned
the
us
big
about
plot
surveillance
twist isn't
states,
the best part of
military-industrial
it,
corruption,
and there's a
the
lot of
dangers
cool
of unchecked
mechanical
AI,
stuff. I
and the
think
moral
it's
cost
like
of
a
war.
byproduct
They
of its
didn't just
jank
entertain you, they
in an
argued
unintentional
with you,
but
critically, they
very
challenged your
useful way.
worldview. Snowden has said that he played Metal Gear Solid as a teenager, and that this affected how he came to think about how governments would spy on their populations. Even Call of Duty was once more willing to push into uncomfortable territory. In Modern Warfare 2 back in 2009, the player goes undercover with a Russian ultra-nationalist terror cell that then massacres civilians at a Moscow airport. At the end of the mission, the cell's leader kills the undercover American operative and then leaves his body behind, making it look like the US carried out the attack. The attack is a false flag designed to frame the United States and trigger a war with Russia. The mission was infamously called No Russian. But you've got to notice the boundary it never crosses. The US isn't behind the attack. The player is placed inside the atrocity, but the responsibility is still with the enemy despite it being deliberately provocative. By 2019, that line had hardened. The ambiguity was stripped away. The enemies made clearer. And in that one case, a real-world US military action was reworked into something attributed to Russian forces. Today, the biggest games on the planet do something close to the opposite of what they once did. They model real US military hardware in extreme detail. The enemies reinforce an orchestrated worldview. They then get reviewed for the realism of their gunplay, the seriousness of their politics, and the quality has dropped through the floor. Who can remember being excited by a Call of Duty release, or any big game title release at all? Probably one of the few major games that effectively parodizes and criticizes America is GTA, because the studio Rockstar North is based in Scotland. While manipulating games and their narratives have clearly been a top priority for decades, at other times the strategy has been much more deliberate and intentional. There's another game deliberately engineered over decades to recruit people, more specifically young people and kids, into the armed forces. In July 2002, the US Army released a video game called America's Army. It's not only a game about the army, it's a game by the army. Free to download, free to play, funded with tens of millions of US taxpayer dollars, and designed from the ground up as a recruitment tool for teenagers. And it worked. US Army surveys found that by 2008, the game had more impact on recruiting than any other form of army advertising combined. 1 in 5 military academy cadets entering West Point in 2005 had played the game before enlisting. The US military is legally barred from enlisting anyone under 17. America's Army was built to start the marketing conversation much earlier, which they themselves admitted. The guy who designed that game was called Casey
It's free
Robinson,
video
who
games.
literally wrote the following: America's Army was explicitly designed to target 12 and 13-year-old boys who had yet to decide what to do with their lives.
Yeah, I think I had a friend who really got into America's Army in 7th grade.
Then, the recruitment strategy had already moved with the
I
times.
say about
and
12 years old.
Media. In late 2018, the US Army then entered Generation Z by opening up an official Twitch channel. The Navy and the Air Force followed. Recruiters, soldiers in uniform.
Luckily, since I didn't have super fast internet and I wasn't interested in multiplayer games, I really didn't get into America's Army.
And the audience was mostly children.
And I was into
To pull
like
kids
Rainbow
in,
Six.
The channel round would look like giveaways for free stuff. Except
I would
the
play
link didn't
Rogue
go to
Sphere
a
on
contest.
56K.
It went to a military recruitment form, and there were no winners.
A giveaway link, which then redirected without any further details of the contest, which was supposedly for an Xbox Series 2 Elite controller. Once they redirected to the giveaway page, though, it was a sign-up for the recruitment form and to be directed by a recruitment officer, without any further details of the past winners of the contest.
Gamers started doing speedrun competitions.
Also, 3H, if you put the Konami code in the football, you get infinite bombs. No, you get 30 bombs instead of just the
who
one.
could get banned by the US Army the fastest. Twitch eventually went to war with the US Army, ordering them to stop running the fake giveaways because they violated gambling laws. But it still happens on a smaller scale today. Up until now, the agency's influence in gaming has mostly been about guns and war, but it actually hides in some really unsuspecting places, including in benign games that don't even look American. In July 2016, a mobile game launched that got 1 billion people to walk outside, point their phone cameras at their own streets, and then send the footage back to a server. If you didn't play it yourself, you know people who did, and that game was Pokemon Go. It was developed by Niantic, a company founded by a former US State Department official. So if you thought this game was a Japanese export, you were wrong. Before Niantic, that official had run a satellite mapping startup called Keyhole. And in February 2003, Keyhole received early-stage funding from In-Q-Tel, the venture capital arm of the CIA. The Q is a reference to
the venture capital arm of the CIA.
Within weeks of the CIA's investment, Keyhole's mapping software was used by the Pentagon to brief US military commanders on bombing targets in Iraq. Google eventually acquired the company in 2004 for $35 million and renamed the software Google Earth. Pokemon Go launched with more daily users than Twitter within a week. Every street, every park, every schoolyard all scanned and sent to the server with full user permissions. The US Energy Department got worried enough to call Niantic directly because Pokestops had started appearing inside top-secret nuclear facilities. The IDF even banned soldiers from playing Pokemon Go in July 2016 after Pokestops and Pokemon spawned inside active military bases. Submariners crewed in the UK's nuclear submarines weren't allowed to play the game because it gave away their position. At its peak, Pokemon Go would have revealed more about top-secret locations than the world's most powerful satellite imagery systems. It was nothing short of an international espionage crisis delivered in the form of the most harmless game imaginable. And this cuts right to the heart of why gaming is an amazing tool for intelligence. It's an interactive Trojan horse that no one suspects of harm. Many countries banned the game outright or called it a spy front. Then in 2024, a Niantic executive was asked on camera whether the company's large geospatial model, meaning a 3D map of the real world, built from a decade of Pokemon Go player footage, could then be sold to governments and militaries. Listen to his answer.
Could you see militaries, governments seeking to use LGMs and purchase them from you?
I could definitely see it.
I could definitely see it. That's pretty ominous when you remember that the company at the center of it was 3 degrees removed from the CIA and its investors. While the CIA's fingerprints on Pokemon Go are oblique, traceable only through corporate history and venture capital filings, another game developer's story is much more direct. Because there are very human consequences to the geopolitical side of gaming, the same as there was for Gary DeVore, who was found at the bottom of a ravine with his hands chopped off when he was making a film about exposing top US officials. This story ends with the developer in a cell on the other side of the world on television confessing to things he says he didn't do. He only just scraped his way out of the situation alive. His name is Amir Hekmati, born in Arizona in 1983 to Iranian-American parents. He served 4 years as a US Marine. After leaving the military, he worked as a contractor on projects for the US Department of Defense, including consulting on Arabic language content for a New York-based video game studio called Kuma Games. Kuma made a free-to-play first-person shooter called Kuma War. It was a strange, controversial product. Every few weeks, Kuma released a new playable mission recreating a real US military operation, often within days of its happening, like killing some
it
of the
chooses
Mardin,
not to go off,
here.
as the Ghost Pro alludes to with its gaining of sentience.
Kuma weirdly held a Pentagon contract to develop training and strategic communication materials for the US Department of Defense. In August 2011, Hekmati flew to Tehran to visit his grandmother's. He had never been to Iran before. 2 weeks into the trip, while visiting his aunt, he was arrested by Iranian intelligence officers. He said he was interrogated for up to 20 hours a day, and according to his testimony, beaten with batons, tasered repeatedly, administered drugs without his consent, and told his family would be killed if he didn't cooperate.
So I tried my best to, keep my head up and withstand all the pressures that were put upon me, some of which were very inhumane and unjust.
And then in December 2011, Iranian state television broadcast a videotaped confession and sentenced him to death for espionage. The sentence was overturned on appeal, and he was finally released in January 2016 as a part of the prison swap. The details surrounding the whole situation remain mysterious today.
I was at a point where I had just sort of accepted the fact that I was going to be spending 10 years in prison. So this was a surprise, and I just feel extremely blessed to see my government do so much for me and the other Americans.
At some point, you've got to ask where all of this is heading, because gaming's link to intelligence operations is now in the process of coming full circle. Games offer a unique field of intervention, as we both interact with them and consume them. They also directly and indirectly train people in the art of modern warfare, and the indirect part is almost more nefarious. Joe Rogan and Theo Von discussed how movies helped engage soldiers' instincts to shoot to kill.
So in World War I, people were shooting, but they weren't shooting at the actual enemy. And so then they realized, well, we've got to do something about that. And so after that, they started creating all these.
Wait, who
really
said we got to do
war
something
movies,
about that,
where the guys
though?
are heroes.
Like,
so then the next group of people that go to war are all going to be indoctrinated with these films.
Right.
And these.
Arguably, however, games did much more work here. The
Joe, what are
military
you trying to
started
say,
using
you
game-type
dummy?
software and Xbox controllers for drone strikes in the mid-2000s, and it was a deliberate planned move. The Pentagon even openly explained why they made that choice. Leading defense researcher P.W. Singer put it plainly in 2009 in his book Wired for War. Quote, "You have a generation coming in that's already been trained in their use, so they learn very quickly." A UN Special Investigator, Philip Alston, looked at the setup and described it at a risk of, quote, "developing a PlayStation mentality to killing." And just look at how it's progressed. Militaries around the world are actively developing systems that automatically generate targets from surveillance data. Every person inside a given population gets a score. The software can pick who lives and who dies. A human might spend a few seconds reviewing the recommendation before it's approved, but that loop is getting closed all the time. It is quite literally the video game the whole industry has been moving toward for 40 years, and the people who would one day run the system could have been training since childhood without even realizing it. Slowly but surely, the Overton window of cyber warfare has creaked open, leading us to a future that those 2000 cyberpunk dystopias warned us about.
We are trying to create a system that observes everyone and judges everyone in a way that we already know is not fair. It is not used properly, it is not used appropriately, it is not used effectively, and I believe does more harm than good. And why are we trying to create a system that sees everything we do and judges us, which is effectively trying to invent God?
Oh, I didn't realize I had this sniper.
That it is a dark and vengeful one. We need to think about the kind of technologies that we are putting in place that rule us, but we do not effectively control. You can't awaken someone who's pretending to be asleep.
That's the line Snowden closed his last long interview on. He took it from a friend who told him it was an old Native American saying. It means you can shout as loudly as you want at someone, but if they've decided not to hear you, you'll never get through to them. The story the public got about mass surveillance was absorbed, repackaged, and moved on from. The strategy behind it didn't shrink, it evolved exponentially. It implemented cutting-edge cameras, it wrote smarter software, it created friendlier interfaces, it entered every corner of our lives. The television, the console next to it, the monitor, the laptop, the controller in your hand, the headset
I'm pumping you data right now. So much data.
The face on the camera, the voice on the mic. They built the world you play. And so while you were playing it, they were learning everything about you. They turned one of the last bastions of hope and freedom into yet
Chat, they
another
know how many grind shots I get in Medal of Honor.
All of it is said and done, the most dangerous game ever made probably wasn't the one you played, it was the one playing you.
Yep.
Don't upload your videos to YouTube. Upload to
Incredible
Restream, where we will live stream it to YouTube and all your platforms at once. Get ready for 5 times more.
That was the end of that one. All right. You know what? Let's see what Maggie McFish is up to.
I'm here.
I've been a huge Resi fan ever since I was a kid, watching my sister play through the games. And this year, we all got to watch our favorite streamers play through Resident Evil 9.
Oh, I don't want Resident Evil 9 spoilers.
Both are federal agents, and I'm gonna let you see if you can spot the difference here.
I think I want a second opinion. I couldn't save them. But I can stop bastards like you.
This is all my fault.
Listen, Resident Evil is known for several kick-ass feminine characters who they refuse to bring back.
Like, as much as I love Daddy Redfield and Baby Girl Leon, they're literally the only characters ever allowed to be invited back in the series and play substantial roles. Where's Jill? Where's Claire? Where's Ada? Where's Rebecca?
Instead of any of those ladies, in Resi 9 we get Grace, a character so neurotic she has trouble stringing sentences together.
Is anyone there?
And gets tossed around like a rag doll. And honestly, I mean, that's fine. To have a protagonist like Grace, who's an emotional wreck, it can be interesting, it can be well done, it can be relatable. I don't know how she became an FBI agent.
What do I do?
I mean, it says nervous system. Should just be a picture of Grace.
But what really struck me about Grace was how she repeatedly blamed herself for literally everything that happens in the plot.
This is all my fault. Again.
Girl, this is Resident Evil. The bad guys are like Batman villains. No offense, but what could you have possibly done to stop this? Grace's self-accusations make so little sense. Even the bad guy doesn't know what she's talking about.
So sorry, it really was all my fault.
What was?
It's actually your boss's fault for sending you in alone.
Perhaps it's time for you to face the past. Confront that fear head on.
This was such an obviously bad idea. I thought maybe he was working for the bad guys.
So the FBI wasn't in on it? I found it so weird that they just let her go there without a partner or anything.
And of course, throughout the game, our hero Leon is his usual, flawless, quippy,
We fancy.
calm, collected self.
Hello, gorgeous.
The only time his character actually disappointed me is when Grace, once again, says that everything is all her fault, and he doesn't console her. He doesn't say, no, it's not. This is all Spencer's fault. Or, no, it's not. It's all Umbrella's fault. He just says,
Look, I get it. Trust me, I get it. But we're still alive. We have to keep going.
Grace's personality reminded me of this micro-trend in horror movies that all came out around the year 2022, where a lot of the main characters were a lot like Grace, a female protagonist who blames themselves for everything that happens in the film. It's the opposite of a good-for-her movie. It's an all-her-fault film. Movies like Smile, Smile 2, the Hellraiser reboot, and Talk to Me all kind of have this general vibe where the main character is a woman who annoys everyone around her. They also believe, like Grace, that everything is all their fault. But the zombies aren't Grace's fault, so are these women right? Is it really all their fault? So I want to talk about this because I think it's interesting. And because as someone who is always liked in every room and every setting, I just simply can't relate. But also because when Leon let me down, I wanted to tell Grace it's not her fault. It's actually the fault of a completely different woman who's made of mold and simply trying to resurrect her dead daughter by kidnapping another baby. Before we get into this, I just want to say I'm the only person that I'm aware of who is calling this like a micro-trend. It's just something I noticed. It's not like all these filmmakers got together and decided they're gonna make this one type of movie. And also, I really like all of these movies that we're gonna be talking about. The Filippo brothers in particular are extraordinarily talented filmmakers who really know how to direct an impactful horror movie. I mean, the knife scene in Bring Her Back, you know the one. So just because I'm talking about these movies and I'm a woman doesn't mean that I hate them. We can think critically about the things that we like. Or, I mean, I can. If you can't, that's your ish to figure out. And no, I have not seen the All Her Fault TV show. I know nothing about it, except apparently it covers some of these similar themes, but that, my friends, is all my fault. My first scientific question is, why is it her fault? Because when I think back on male characters in horror, they don't often blame themselves for anything. Immediately I thought of The Fly. Classic slimy but charming guy who is secretly terrible and is hoisted by his own ambitions. Sinister, everything is Ethan Hawke's fault, puts his family at risk just for his career.
The
Uncut
Knife of
Gems,
Abraham.
The Safdie brothers also work in this space. The inevitable consequences of their characters'
Seeing the
actions
sword and
are
sorcery
barely
side of the
grotesque.
Nazis
But
tonight.
it's interesting to me that male characters so rarely blame themselves for what happens in a story.
It's not my fault. No light speed. It's not my fault.
They are usually unable or unwilling to self-reflect. I mean, that's usually how they've gotten this far in the first place.
What the fuck?
It's often a story about man's hubris or sheer audacity in the face of what is clearly all his fault.
This is my fucking way. This is how I win. All right?
There are even some movies about how men will construct Rube Goldberg justifications for why everything they actually did is really some other guy's fault. The I'm a different guy defense. Conversely, women characters seem to end up viscerally aware of or devastated by the fact that, quote unquote, everything is their fault. That all the harm and carnage can be traced back to them. And I'm speaking in general terms, but to me, who accepts blame and who denies the consequences of their actions often fall along gendered lines. Not because of any actual inherent difference between genders, but because of the world we live in. A world that was built on women being the scapegoat for everything from witchcraft to all the wars that ever existed. I am not kidding. One of the most famous Victorian thinkers, John Ruskin, lectured, "There is not a war in the world, no, nor an injustice, but you women are answerable for it. Not in that you have provoked, but in that you have not hindered. Men, by their nature, are prone to fight. They will fight for any cause or for none. It is for you to choose their cause for them and to forbid them when there is no cause. There is no suffering, no injustice, no misery in the earth, but the guilt of it lies with you." It's the Victorian version of "what were you wearing when we invaded?"
The moment you give women choice, they choose to improve their lives by marrying someone better. And so over time, what happens is your society collapses.
I mean, hell, let's go back even further. In the story of Adam and
Oh, can I climb that
Eve
over
is
there?
of course tricked by the snake to eat the apple and then gives the apple to Adam. Adam blames Eve for the fall, and this is why Christians believe that humans are inherently sinful. I think we all casually recall this story of Eve tempting or even seducing Adam.
Damn,
to eat
homie
an
should
apple,
have shot
which
the
is funny
head.
because
Both
that
of them
completely
shots
erases
the
the
head.
real villain, the snake, the guy who put this all in motion in the first place. What was Eve supposed to do? Literally defeat the devil in the Garden of Eden? Also, she
Right.
has to give the apple to Adam. Otherwise, that would imply women have been gifted with secret knowledge that Adam does not possess. I also think it's interesting that in a different version of Adam and Eve from the Quran, it emphasizes that they are both at fault and are ultimately forgiven by God, implying that
Let me see if I can
humans are
climb up the
born
side of that
pure
tower
for
real
accepting
quick.
fault and repenting. The idea of original sin in Christianity was solidified by Augustine of Hippo, writing around 400 AD, who interprets that Eve was especially susceptible to the serpent because women are weaker, less moral, and more corruptible than men. 2026 is giving you a big eye roll, my Hippo dude. So, with that guy's blessing, the story of humanity's fall became about how women are bad, the snake is neutral to forgettable, and Adam is righteously justified in being mad at her for all of the problems in the world. Not because that's the truth or something that actually happened, but because it was written and co-opted by a patriarchal structure who needed to run defense for that snake for some f***ing reason. And just like original sin is the idea that humans are marked with a sin that we supposedly committed before we were even born, women are marked with an idea that there is something inherently wrong with them before they are even born.
Oh, I know just how you feel, Pumpkin. I've had my share of disappointments, too. It's a girl. Can you check again?
Systems like the patriarchy create binaries, separating people into men and sluts in order to create a hierarchy to maintain and control the power structure that benefits them. If women are meant to be in the home, then they can't beat you for a promotion. So the fact that men's "it's all my fault" stories and women's "it's all my fault" stories look different totally makes sense to me on a societal level. And bringing it back to Resident Evil Requiem, The dual protagonists, unhinged Grace and unflappable Leon, are cartoonish examples of that binary.
Good thing I'm playing video games and I can't look directly at the screen.
FD Signifier put it better than I could in his playthrough of the game.
They got me on my masculine real quick and said, but here's Leon, don't you feel better now? And I was like, you know what, you're right. I do feel better, this is great. They put me in my feminine by making me feel disempowered, and now I do feel better now that he's here.
Now, you may be thinking that I am saying there are no good all her fault stories. Au contraire. Let's take a look at what I believe to be an incredible all her fault canon horror film. One of the best to ever do it. Drag Me to Hell is a Sam Raimi classic.
It's about to drop.
You're not supposed to like the Drag Me to Hell lady.
Christine works at a bank as a loan officer. In the beginning, we see her male coworkers not take her seriously because she's a woman.
I was wondering if you'd made any decision regarding the assistant manager's position.
Right now it's between Stu and yourself.
Stu Rubin, the new guy?
Well, I know he's new, but he's also quite aggressive, and we like that.
We overhear her boyfriend's mom critique her because Christine's family is lower class.
We're starting for dinner. She is. I can't wait.
We are placed immediately up against the ropes in a male-dominated workplace that values ruthlessness and a class structure that judges her for growing up on a farm. And then she meets her match. Sylvia Ganoush enters the bank asking for an extension on her mortgage. Quick sidebar here. This is just a straight up Romani stereotype, right?
Yep.
I tried to find any academic writings about this and I was shocked how little I found. So if anyone has any sources or are Romani and want to comment on this, please do. At first, Christine is sympathetic towards Sylvia, but with a looming promotion on the horizon, Christine does what her boss wants her to do. Deny the loan. And because of this, all hell breaks loose. Literally, get it? Christine was given an option to help someone in their time of need, and she chose the life of a girl boss at the expense of someone that she could have helped. We understand why she did what she did. It's not fair that she would be scrutinized at work if she had helped Sylvia out, and it's not fair her boss dangled a looming promotion in front of her. But she still made her decision, and in the end, the single decision to deny the loan is very much all her fault. Christine's circumstances creates a hell in which she cannot escape. Getting the promotion would probably make her look better in her future mother-in-law's eyes, fixing both of her problems at once. But in order to do so, she must do what men do within this patriarchal system. Screw over someone you believe is beneath you, and that, in and of itself, is hell. Now I want to look at the films.
Cool,
I
the
think
window
are
of the
trying to
guard.
hold
Oh shit.
So, for my next scientific question, I would like to ask, is it though? Is it really all her fault? All right, let's dive into these movies. The all her fault trend really popped off in 2022 with the release of Smile, the Hellraiser reboot, Talk to Me, and continuing with Smile 2 a few years later. The female protagonists
the
of all four of
Hellraiser
these movies
reboot.
share a distinct set of traits. These characters all struggle with addiction. Rose in Smile is a workaholic.
You haven't been here since the late shift last night, have you?
Both Skye in Smile 2 and Riley in Hellraiser explicitly battle drug addiction. Act 2 of Hellraiser is kicked off when she starts popping pills again, directly leading to the death of her brother. And Mia in Talk to Me battles a metaphorical drug addiction, as the hand which the characters use to communicate with ghosts is clearly a stand-in for party drugs.
Did you give him something? No. Come on, I know you've done before. What was it?
Nothing, I swear.
Each narrative ties the protagonist's addiction
Actually, Ghost Bro,
directly
I
to their
disagree.
trauma, which
I
ends up
don't think
affecting
it's
their
the
relationships with
protag's
their
fault in the first
families and
Hellraiser movie.
romantic partners. Rose's
Actually, the
mother
first two
overdosed on
Hellraiser
drugs,
movies.
leading her to overextend herself, helping her own patients.
Do you still blame yourself?
And a
It's kind of
boyfriend who she
victims.
seems
Oh
unable
shit.
to really connect
Oh
with.
shit.
Do you hear yourself? I mean, Jesus Christ, you sound crazy.
I am not crazy!
Skye has a pushy, overly controlling momager.
And here I am, sacrificing every fiber of my being to support you.
And an emotionally abusive boyfriend who died in a car crash.
Oh, you look so
fucking ugly when you cry. It's horrible. I can't.
Leading her to relive the past and fear that her actions will once again hurt those around her. Mia's mother took her own life battling with depression, leading Mia to live in denial about her own mental health problems.
It's just feeling alive.
And an obsession with her ex-boyfriend, who's now dating her best friend.
Hi, was my boyfriend before. Oh my god, you guys held hands once 3 years ago. That doesn't mean anything.
Riley has a brother who acts like a father figure.
Hey, I worry about you, Riley. You gotta stick to this. Riley, I'm not trying. I love you.
Plus a fuck buddy who's literally manipulating her into doing this guy's dirty. But somehow none of this is his fault. Most importantly, the traumas are framed as their character flaw, as if trauma is the monster that these women must overcome. This one's kind of weird, but in each of these movies, everyone in the universe of that film seems to find the female protagonist absolutely obnoxious.
She irritates the fuck out of me.
She's emotionally messy.
You guys have to believe me, please.
Fascist night.
She drives everyone over.
Someone's getting
Family,
mad.
friends, romantic partners. People find these women insufferable.
Get the fuck out!
One of the most compelling shots from the Hellraiser reboot is when the chains burst out of Riley's chest. It's a physical manifestation of the way that her messy emotions, her
Oh
heart,
shit, what?
kills the people that she cares about the most. These characters are constantly apologizing.
I'm so sorry. God, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Scary. Holy shit. Did you all see those knights come at me?
The protagonists of the two Smile movies in particular will not stop.
Sorry. I'm sorry. No, sorry, not you. Sorry, I just called. I'm so sorry. No, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I'm laying all of this on you.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry, everyone. Sorry, everyone. I'm sorry.
Away from me! I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Honestly, iconic. And finally, like our road race, we learn that all four of these women blame themselves, whether the protagonist says it out loud or another character makes it very clear. These women are convinced that everything happening is all their fault.
My life ends up broken because of me. And I have carried that guilt for my entire life. I'm a bad person, so can you fix me?
All right, we have some backtracking to do.
You came because of me, because it's my fault.
After I noticed this trend, like any good pattern, I started seeing it pop up surprisingly often. Female characters shouldering all of the emotional weight of guilt and shame for unspeakable horrors.
And it's all my fault. I am so sorry.
I am so sorry. So sorry. I'm sorry.
This is all my fault. This is all my fault.
And carry that burden in a way that
I
men
do
just
also think it's a byproduct of the shortcut for easy characterization or conveying a character his change on a position is to just have them apologize on it.
There's even the rare case where a male character says the magic phrase, like this moment from Danny in Evil Dead Rise.
This is all my fault.
And apologizes for his actions.
I'm sorry, guys.
But even in this example, we see the gender binary at work. With all of the female protagonists that I've mentioned, the narrative explicitly frames the bad things that happen as more than just the direct result of a simple action. Their
Knife of
entire
Abraham
narrative is
acquired.
awash with their negative emotions, driven by their anxieties and shame. Their guilt is symbolic, grand, biblical even. On the other hand, Danny isn't the main character of Evil Dead Rise by any stretch of the imagination. He has no real character arc, nothing to learn from his actions. When he finds the evil book that leads to almost everyone around him getting killed, it's boyish curiosity that leads him to do what he does. Not trauma or addiction, His dad has left the family, but his missing father figure isn't thematically tied to him finding the book or opening it and accidentally summoning the Deadites. It's Beth, the female protagonist, who needs to learn a lesson. A specifically matronly lesson about being a mommy. I do think that these all her fault films were aiming to craft flawed, deep, well-rounded characters. But considering how often women are blamed for things that are not
Yeah,
their fault,
it feels like a byproduct of trying to stick to a screenwriting formula at the cost of like actual understanding.
believe that she believes everything is all her fault because it's a character flaw, and her character arc is learning that she needs to stop feeling guilty for things that aren't her fault.
But it checks the
The movie
spreadsheet.
is really telling us that yes, everything is all her fault. So, for my next scientific question, is it her fault? I want to revisit everything that these films have in common. Addiction is an interesting topic to discuss fault with. You kind of have to balance showing the harm that addiction causes the person who is addicted and their friends and family members, but you also don't want to demonize people struggling with addiction because it's literally a medical condition and it is extremely prevalent. So you will absolutely have people with personal experiences with it in your audience. And if we're talking fault, where do people like the Sacklers fit into that equation of who is at fault? It's just a hard subject to make someone take 100% of the blame.
I let you all down, and I promise that will never happen.
And while the other films are about literal drug addiction, in Smile, we are told that Rose's addiction is working too much, something no one would ever tell any man in the same position. And like, so what? She doesn't even have kids. Did the trauma monster check her time card before popping into her patient? Speaking of trauma, this one is even stickier. When we're talking about all her fault narratives that revolve around trauma, I think it's very easy to read it as, this trauma I have endured is all my fault. Healing from trauma is your responsibility, but the trauma itself isn't your fault. I would buy that Smile was trying to say something similar to this, but Rose isn't running from responsibility. She's running from trauma. We all agree this monster's name is Trauma, right? Okay, great. Is it their fault that they're annoying? Is it my fault that I'm annoying? What do we get to kill because I'm annoying? Okay, now I am just getting Stepford wife energy from all of these people. Why are they apologizing 500 times a minute? Weren't women told that they were annoying for apologizing all the time?
Yeah, it does show a bankruptcy of like having a constructive ideal as far as what you imagine a person's potential to
be. Or do they
be.
apologize because they are annoying? I'm not convinced that it is. It seems like you are all just dealing with difficult circumstances, many of which are beyond your control, not to mention a blood-soaked demon from the ether grabbing at your heels. So...
This too. This is the issue with the over-genreification of
one of my favorite
adult entertainment, and I don't mean adult in like an erotica sense. I mean adult in like pertaining to serious issues or attempting to be more intellectual. It's the Stephen King issue where eventually it's like, well, like if this isn't a metaphor, it's just kind of dumb for it to be a literalization of a monster.
The car crash that took her husband away is not her fault. And between raising her son and working a full-time job, she hardly has a moment to allow herself to heal. She is surrounded by people who are not stepping up to help her in her time of need.
It also reduces the concept of mental health to slaying monsters.
I have moved on.
Fictional monsters at that.
I don't mention him. I don't talk about him. What strain is that on you, Claire?
We watch Amelia's concerning behavior escalate until she considers killing her own son, because he is a reminder of the pain and suffering she experienced at the death of her husband. Just like in Drag Me to Hell, we understand the circumstances that make Amelia so isolated and alone, unable to confront the trauma banging down her door. And I think it adds to the horror, because if we understand it, we can see how, in theory, it could happen to us. Movies like The Babadook and If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You really take you inside the mind and emotions of the female protagonist and force the audience to consider that these women are harming those around them with their actions but also the impossible circumstances that they have found themselves in. It adds to their depth. It grounds their questionable actions in our fucked up reality. We show the serpent whispering in their ears as we watch them take a bite of the apple anyway. And I think that's what sets them apart.
Gang, I just want to highlight that this note says Valhalla is really a room for communing with dead German kings, as well as the future home to where the ashes of Hitler and other Nazi high officials will go. Just the complete mysticism of it all. Let's just see. Which is worse, constantly apologizing or never apologizing? I take offense that many male characters are not allowed to apologize. I think never apologizing worse. Because if somebody's constantly apologizing, it presents you an opportunity to be like, hey man, I'm glad you're apologetic, but consider if you're conceding too much too often. Whereas never apologizing, you're never going to have that cycle of communication which permits that sort of growth. My 2 cents. Let's continue on.
From the all her fault narratives that I mentioned earlier. While those films, which all happen to be written and directed by men, feel like they are at a distance from their female protagonists, judging their actions and emotional outbursts from the outside, the women filmmakers of The Babadook and If I Had Legs bring us closer to these women and the existential horror taking place within them. It's not to say male writers and directors can't write women with that kind of depth. I already mentioned Sam Raimi, and Colossal, written and directed by my friend Nacho, is a sorely underrated flick.
House with the Weather Vane. Also, I don't need any kind of AI shit, Google.
Is it these women's
I almost
fault
got hit
that
by
they
a
saw their
Waymo
mothers
today,
die
guys. It
before
was
their
fucking
eyes?
awesome.
Is it their fault that some guy made a box that summons BDSM demons? Is it their fault that a virus was created in 1997 as a biological weapon? Ultimately, which woman is to blame for this is a devastatingly boring question to me. It's an accounting question. It's a question of balancing the books of morality.
Right.
This is not my fault.
Jay, don't.
I feel like men think acknowledging fault is this huge, revelatory experience because they hardly do it. In reality, it's simply step one. Not only is it not revelatory for these women characters, they're apologizing 15 times a day, it's often not even true. See, Grace blames herself for,
in the narrative sense.
Everything. This is even weirder when you realize the game goes out of its way to give a redemption arc to Oswald Spencer, the Emperor Palpatine of the Resident Evil franchise.
Amazing.
He's responsible for the T-virus that turns people into zombies, resulting in millions of deaths, stretching back decades?
Also, I don't know how I feel about the redemption arc for Spencer, of all people. Isn't he totally fucked up? Obviously being the founder of Umbrella.
He killed Mr. Trevor.
And how they made their money. Isn't it just totally corrupt?
But we are supposed to feel like he turned over a new leaf because in an interview on his deathbed, he reveals that he adopted Grace. Which is doubly ironic because he doesn't even raise Grace. Grace is raised by the woman who conducted the interview, who also gets killed in front of Grace's eyes.
Good thing I'm not paying attention to most of this.
That she feels is her fault. So this guy, who is
I've got
actually at
motorcycle
fault
Nazis
for
to fight.
everything,
Holy
gets
shit.
redeemed. But Grace, who saw her mother killed in front of her eyes, spends the entire game running around, shouting about how she is a terrible monster who has ruined everything. And no, it's not a story where Grace learns that she shouldn't blame herself for other people's actions or overcome her fears, gain inner strength, or do really anything at all.
You know, usually in a survival horror game, you might have someone starting helpless, like Grace, and then as they go on, they gain various weapons and items and become much stronger by the end. This doesn't really happen with Grace. She never actually has to become that powerful because then you go to Leon, who starts powerful and stays powerful.
So, I guess I'll be daddy. Don't sweat it, Grace. It wasn't all your fault. It was actually the fault of a sacred flower in West Africa called the Stairway of the Sun, exploited by Oswald Spencer as part of his plan to... Wow, Maggie, if you're so opinionated, why don't you just make your own horror movie? Good idea, voice inside my head. I am making
Right, I
my
saw
own
her
horror
bumping
movie.
this.
It's called Blow, and it's about a blow-up doll named Doll who takes revenge on predatory men. It's glittery, it's bloody, it's campy, it's scary. Our horror monster takes the object of the male gaze and turns her into an agent of violent justice. Right now, we are running a campaign to raise money to film Blow and bring Doll to life. The short is a standalone 10-minute film with a twist ending. And if a movie about a blow-up doll luring people that deserve it into her dollhouse sounds like something that you would like to see, check out our page on Seed and Spark where you can donate to our crowdfunding campaign. We wanted to make sure everyone who donated got to walk away with something special, so we came up with some really cool rewards. From your name in the credits, to a personalized postcard from Doll, to a social media shout out, to a copy of these movie notebooks I designed to keep track of everything you watch. By the time you're seeing this, there are only a few days left to help support the campaign. And we know times are tough, so if you can't swing a few bucks right now, just give the project a follow on Seed and Spark and share it on social media. Every little bit counts. I've put together an amazing creative team, including our unbelievably talented creature designer, Krista, who designed and fabricated Doll. You might have seen some of the YouTube shorts that I've uploaded that give a behind-the-scenes look at how Krista created our monster. Our director, Monica, was featured in the documentary Horror Noir to represent the future of Black horror directors, and she's directed beauty and drag videos, making her the perfect person to helm the project. Our producer, Vicky, a Sundance Producers Lab fellow, is an absolute pro. And our production designer, Dan, designed and built our set for my show on Nebula, Amy's
Nice.
Dungeons. We're well on our way towards our goal, but we still need a lot of help getting there. This budget will go towards paying our crew a fair wage, renting cameras, a light package, feeding everybody, not to mention post-production costs and insurance. So check out our Seed and Spark page, link in the description below, share the project, contribute if you can, and tell all of your friends about Blow, the movie about a blow-up doll that kills people. There are plenty more of my videos that you can check out here on YouTube. I've also got a Patreon if you like to support your favorite creators that way, or you want to get the videos before anyone else. Just head over to patreon.com/magnetization. And of course, I am on Nebula, the creator-owned streaming service where you can watch both of my Nebula
That was an
exclusive
own goal
series,
on their
Unrated
behalf.
and Amy's Dead End Dream House. Wow, that was a lot. This was a terrible week to switch up with new introductions. So, until next time, tell Martha it's not all her fault. It's actually Batman and Superman.
Constantly apologizing, chill, bro. Also never apologizing, also chill, bro. Shoot him in the truncheon. White lady blaming Africa. The flower apologized multiple times for the tasty zombie goodness it contains. Alright, what else did I have lined up here? We're done with the Maggie May fish. Oh yeah, let's hop into some Leah Miller. Actually, let's take a quick break and then we'll hop into some Leah Miller. I'm gonna throw up the brake bumper. I'm gonna stand up, stretch, rehydrate. Gang, as always, smoke them if you got them. We're going on break. See you soon.
Here's the thing. I don't want impeachment. I don't want them to serve time. I want them taken into the city town square. Hot from their ankles. And cut them from my justice.
Hi, it's Monday, May 11th, 2026. You're tuned
There we
into
go.
Why America. I'm your lawyer friend, Legia Miller. Last week, Steve Roth, the CEO of Vornado Trust, the largest commercial landlord in New York City, speaking during his company's quarterly earnings call, claimed that the phrase tax the rich is just as bad as a racial slur.
That I consider the phrase tax the rich, quote, tax the rich, but spit out with anger and contempt by politicians both here and across the country, to be just as hateful as some disgusting racial slurs and even the phrase from the river to the sea.
Roth was responding to New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani's recent video that he released on Tax Day, announcing his plan to increase taxes on properties in New York City that are second residences and worth over $5 million. In the video, Mamdani stood in front of billionaire Ken Griffin's penthouse apartment and pointed out that Griffin bought the property for $238 million, and it isn't even his primary residence. It is the most expensive home ever sold in the United States. Steve Roth said Mamdani's statements were irresponsible and dangerous, and Ken Griffin said that Mamdani pointing out where he lives, albeit only sometimes when he feels like it, makes him feel really unsafe. This sentiment echoes a larger trend of popular desperation and anger spilling over in a way that billionaires find threatening. They're finally being faced with the consequences of their actions, of 50 years of fucking around and finding out in the neoliberal playground that allowed them to amass their wealth to begin with, and the anger of the masses is reaching a fever pitch. Today, we're discussing why billionaires absolutely should be scared, and how it's absolutely in their best interest to agree to taxation, because the alternative is probably far worse. First, let me take a moment to pay the bills because I am not in fact a millionaire and I gotta keep the lights on.
Your favorite sports are on YouTube. Catch every action-packed moment.
Are they though? Are they? What's my favorite sport,
Today's video,
Google?
PDS debt. Credit card debt sucks. I have struggled with it. I know how stressful and overwhelming it can feel to watch those debts pile up, and it's so hard to live your life under the constant strain of worrying about credit card debt, on top of, literally everything else going on right now. And of course, it's the credit companies that win when you have to keep paying them huge amounts of interest every month. It can feel so good to finally take back control of your life by tackling those big, scary debts, especially if you can get a little help along the way. If you're struggling with credit cards, personal loans, collections, or medical bills, you need to check out PDS Debt. PDS Debt provides a service to match you with debt solutions tailored to your financial situation, and they have a team of people ready to help you with your debt journey. They understand your specific scenario and will help provide alternative solutions to becoming debt-free. PDS Debt is offering a free debt analysis. It only takes 30 seconds. Head over to pdsdebt.com/Miller to get your free debt assessment today. You'll receive a full breakdown on how to save on interest each month and the quickest way to take care of your debt. There's no minimum credit score required. Whether your credit is bad or fair, they're here to help you save more, pay off your debt faster, and start putting money back where it belongs in your savings account. PDS Debt is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, posts hundreds of 5-star reviews on Google, and holds a 5-star rating on Trustpilot. And getting started is easy. Go to pdsdebt.com/Miller to complete your free debt assessment in just 30 seconds to see what options are available to you. Get your free assessment and find the best option for you right now at pdsdebt.com/Miller. Thanks, PDS Debt. So let's just pause and unpack this. A billionaire CEO thinks the act of someone pointing out publicly available information about another billionaire's vacation home is dangerous. He thinks that calling for increased taxation on rich people is akin to a disgusting racial slur. Steve Roth, by the way, co-owns a major Manhattan office building with President Donald Trump and has done real estate deals with Jared Kushner's family real estate business. This man's also 85 years old, and he's not an idiot. He was born in 1941. He's seen things. He's seen the impact of actual racial slurs, of racism on this country. In fact, Steve Roth is Jewish, likely a raging Zionist. That's just a guess on my part, but I bet I'm right.
I mean, if he considers from the river to the sea.
The phrase from the river to the sea is, in his mind, akin to the phrase tax the rich. Why would a billionaire, someone who's likely faced discrimination in his lifetime because of his Jewish identity, why would he find taxation to be akin to racism and anti-Zionism? The only answer I can fathom is that because for him, his identity as a billionaire, as a member of the top 1%, or really 0.1%, is the main source of his identity. It is as strong, if not stronger, a defining factor of his personhood as his Jewish identity. He feels personally offended and defensive when he sees the mayor hitting on his poor billionaire friend Ken Griffin. He feels personally victimized.
YouTube's like,
by
hey,
taxation.
we noticed you're
Ken
broke.
Griffin himself, after
You want
Mamdani's
some help
remarks,
with that?
said, quote, "What Mamdani just did to me, and more
We
broadly
can
is
sell your
doing to the
data to
city
more
of New York,
people."
is triggering of the trauma I went through in Chicago." This had me reflecting on a book that I'm currently reading, which has been on my list for a long time, and I finally got off the wait list at my library for it. It's called These Truths by Jill Lepore. It's a history of the United States, and it is so good. It reads like a story. Like, I read it before bed. Usually I don't want nonfiction before bed, but truly I'm like, yes, tuck me in, I'm ready for my story. Anyway, Lepore does a great job of never losing sight of the role that slavery played throughout the American Revolution. Our history books, at least mine growing up, tend to forget about the whole slavery thing when recalling the Declaration of Independence and the whole all men are created equal thing. We tend to write it off as, well, it was just of the time. That's just how it was in olden days.
Sounding
Slavery
book.
was normalized. They didn't know any better. In These Truths, Lepore makes it clear over and over again that people understood the contradictions in their words and actions, and they did it anyway. And the reason I bring this up in the context of the discussion we're having around taxing the rich is because, of course, the American Revolution was instigated in part because of a fight over taxation. And I was struck by how frequently our founding fathers, whom we revere so much, likened taxation without representation to slavery. To be taxed without having a voice is to be a slave, according to many learned men at the time.
He is
and
a
then when other people were
businessman.
like, hey, what? Hey, you literally own slaves? What are you talking about? Because people were very aware of the contradiction in real time on the ground
hey, the space.
contemporaneously.
I missed the space
The
last
wealthy
time,
white
I
men
think.
said, yeah, well,
Hell
this is
yeah.
different. The people we enslaved don't know any better. Or they refused to engage with it at all. Or they said, well, my liberation must come first. Or there was some story that they had sold themselves that made them think the humans they had enslaved deserved it and they did not. And to them, taxation was just as bad as slavery. Fast forward to today, we have a group of people whose number one identifier is class. Above faith, above race, even though that's not usually a problem, above country of origin, it's class. And that's the billionaire class. The rest of us haven't been quite as good at reaching class consciousness, but the billionaire class knows they have to stick together in order to survive. And they are aware of their own contradictions, but they have sold themselves a lie and they try to sell it to us as well. The same lie that Steve Roth went on in that call to sell to investors. That billionaires started from nothing, built the American dream, worked hard, deserved all their riches, provide jobs, pay taxes, and therefore deserve to be thanked and praised for it. He literally said that we should be thanking and praising the 1% instead of taxing them more. But this is the same lie we've been fed for our whole lives, and Steve Roth and his ilk wouldn't be so threatened by any of this if they thought that the lie was working. They know we can see through it. Our anger is palpable. 2 galas last week gave protesters an opportunity to make that anger known. At the Met Gala, the fundraiser for the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Costume Institute, which charges $100,000 a ticket and gives the rich and famous a chance to attempt high fashion in a way that makes it a fun spectacle to watch and judge, this year the Met named Jeff Bezos and his wife Lauren Sanchez Bezos as honorary chairs, which just means they gave a fuck ton of money to make themselves seem culturally relevant. And then the best Lauren Sanchez Bezos could muster for her red carpet look was a glorified mother of the bride look when the theme was fashion as art, which is also a stupid fucking theme because fashion already is art, but I digress. Immediately after it was announced that the whole shebang was dedicated to those Bezos creeps, in February, a campaign calling for the boycott of the Met Gala sprung up overnight. Zohran Mamdani announced he wasn't going to attend, despite many of his predecessors doing so, saying he was too busy focusing on affordability to attend. Again, this man is a political genius. He never fucking strays from the message. A guerrilla activist group called Everyone Hates Elon also called for a boycott of the event. Some stars got scared off from attending, and Everyone Hates Elon even staged a direct action in which they placed 300 bottles of fake urine inside the Metropolitan Museum of Art. A nod to reports that Amazon workers have to pee in bottles because they're forced to skip bathroom breaks on the job. They also projected giant videos interviewing Amazon workers onto the Empire State Building, the Chrysler Building, and onto Bezos' own penthouse. One projection said, If you can buy the Met Gala, you can pay more taxes. Also last week, the right-wing think tank, the Manhattan Institute, held their own gala, a $50,000 per plate affair in Midtown Manhattan that honored hedge fund billionaire Paul Singer, a major Trump supporter, with its Alexander Hamilton Award. The event attracted hundreds of protesters who heckled attendees, arriving in their black tie gowns and tuxedos, by yelling, among other things, tax the rich, and also Nazis. And this comes on the heels last month of an attack on the San Francisco residence of OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, in which a man threw a Molotov cocktail at Altman's house before fleeing, attempting to gain entrance to the headquarters of OpenAI with a jug of kerosene, a lighter, and an anti-AI manifesto, but he was stopped before he could do any damage. This is an example of how the AI boom is adding massive fuel to the fire, no pun intended, of public sentiment against soaring wealth inequality, because now our entire economy is propped up by a few billion-dollar AI companies whose value is based on nothing more than a hope and a prayer at this point, and will likely bring about cataclysmic changes not only to the economy that will likely erase hundreds of thousands of jobs, but also to our environment, which simply cannot sustain the level of growth in AI data centers and the unconscionable amount of energy and fresh drinking water they use. The growth in AI, the wealth it's concentrating into a few hands, the potential for cataclysmic damage it can cause, it's all making the wealth inequality in our society impossible to ignore for more and more people. And unlike the taxes that we want to impose on the rich, these consequences absolutely pose an existential threat to all of us. Daniel Moreno Gama, the man accused of throwing the Molotov cocktail at Sam Altman's house, at one point posted online suggesting that people should be Luigiing some tech CEOs, a reference to anti-billionaire darling Luigi Mangione, who is still awaiting trial after his alleged murder in 2024 of the United Health Group CEO in broad daylight on a Manhattan street. Both his federal and state trials have been pushed back to September, though the federal trial will likely be pushed back further due to the whole scheduling conflict that two simultaneous trials present. Mangione has pleaded not guilty to charges in both cases. The prosecutor in the federal case recently pushed against the delay, saying, "Your Honor need only look out the window."
Axis leadership at the beginning of the war. Adolf Hitler, Führer of the Third Reich, the man who personifies true evil. Benito Mussolini, an incompetent thug who sold out his own people. Hermann Göring, the decadent Reich Marshal in charge of the Luftwaffe. And Heinrich Himmler, head of the Nazi SS who oversaw the greatest crimes against humanity. Himmler was a mentally unstable man who truly believed the crazy mythology that he and his fellow SS deviants created in their efforts to establish an independent state within Nazi Germany. Unfortunately, Himmler took his own life before he could be brought to trial, unlike Göring, who was convicted and sentenced to death at the Nuremberg War Crimes Tribunal, and who is no doubt spending eternity with the rest of his friends.
All right. On to mission 5. Excellent. Let's see the next FMV.
There's a new mission that's suddenly opened up, but it's strictly on a volunteer basis. This is the town of Casino, the gateway to Rome. And this is the abbey that sits above Casino, on a small mountain that is the most strategic spot in a most strategic town. The Allies have been stuck here for weeks, unable to take
these
the hill or the abbey
Mediterranean
from the
locations.
Germans, and time is running out. Unlike the ruins on Crete, Command has made the decision that it's time to attack the site from the air, no matter the consequences to history or scholarship. The abbey has been there for over 1,400 years, and tomorrow, it's going to be bombed into oblivion.
Oh no.
Now, here's where it gets complicated. Just within the last hour, we finished translating a message that was transmitted from the abbey last night. It was written in, of all things, Latin. What it says is quite troubling. The author claims to be a monk sympathetic to the Allied cause, someone who doesn't want to see any more loss of life on either side. Now here's the really distressing part. The monk claims that there are several downed American pilots being held inside as prisoners of war. He says they're confined to cells in the old part of the Abbey and would surely be killed in a raid. There certainly have been a lot of airmen from the 8th Air Force lost over Italy, so the monk's claim is not without merit. But let me be clear, Manon. We don't have any independent confirmation of the monk's story, or if he even is a monk. The language and diction check out, but the Nazis have fooled us before. This all just might be a clever ruse on their part to prevent an aerial bombardment. The mission is fairly straightforward. Clandestinely infiltrate the Abbey, rescue the POWs, and disrupt the Germans' operation by destroying whatever equipment
a sneaking mission.
The monk's message contained very
Haven't had
specific
any of
instructions
those
on
in a
how to
moment.
sneak inside, which you can read on the plane if you accept this mission.
Of course I do.
To see the people that follow this defendant and believe that what he did was right. From the courtroom to the streets of New York to social media feeds and No Kings rallies across the country, everyone knows there is a cost of living crisis. Everyone is pleading for change, and some are getting desperate enough to act out on that crisis through protest, through direct action, and yes, even through violence. We all know it, and you better bet the billionaires know it as well. And now, the protesters showing up to their galas, to the streets outside their homes, are presenting a very real existential threat to the 1% that they cannot ignore. They're forcing them to contend with the consequences of their actions in a way that they haven't had to for decades. Suddenly, the bunkers that they all built for the eventual societal collapse they assumed would result from their actions all feels woefully insufficient, because it turns out that the biggest threat to billionaires isn't some far-off Mad Max-style wasteland, but is instead staring them in the face on the streets or at their front door. And they're fucking terrified. What's wild, though, is that for all the violent rhetoric and actions being carried out against billionaires, the calls to eat the rich, the popularity of guillotine imagery when discussing the 1%, really the vast majority of people are not screaming off with their heads. They're screaming, tax the rich. Asking for higher taxation is the moderate stance here.
Yeah.
They should be glad that people want taxes and not revenge. It would, at this point, be in the 1%'s best interest to increase taxes. Taxation is the moderate stance here. Far from societal overthrow, taxation at this point would simply allow the state to redistribute resources in a way that makes existing under capitalism more comfortable for more people. Make America Great Again, in the 60s, the highest marginal tax rate was 90%. The post-World War II boom that led to American prosperity was spurred on in part from government-financed programs that ensured people had jobs and support to buy houses. Not all people, not black people, but the whites of many socioeconomic classes were doing really well during the post-war boom. Dreaming of raising yourself up to the middle class wasn't far-fetched. There actually was a middle class. There were people who could buy cars and houses and take a trip once a year. Right now, the moderate stance is to raise taxes so that the government could actually provide for its people. That would benefit many people, but it would also benefit the 1%, let's be clear. They would be purchasing our compliance. It's a lot easier to swallow capitalism when you're also benefiting from it. It's a lot easier to be lulled into a sense of consumerist fulfillment when you actually have the cash to be a consumer. Increased taxes are the moderate stance here. They should be glad that all most people want is taxes. We have been sold the lie for the last 50 years, since Reagan ruined everything, that taxation and regulation are dangerous, radical, communist talking points. There is nothing radical about Zohran Mamdani saying, hey, let's tax millionaires for the second homes they own in New York City. If you own a second home in New York City, let alone one that's worth over $5 million, you can handle the tax. You should be glad he's just asking for taxes. You should be glad we want taxes and not revenge. Ever heard of the French Revolution? Let me know if you want a separate video about the French Revolution, because I've been meaning to go down a whole ADHD rabbit hole there. Suffice it to say, despite moderates' best attempts at the time at appeasing the swelling angry peasant masses in France in the late 1700s, it was too little too late, and the guillotine got a lot of practice for a few years there. The point is that the people are furious, and they're increasingly consolidating who they're pointing the fingers at. Turns out it wasn't the immigrants all along. Of course, there are still many people who are also pointing the finger at immigrants, but there are also many people who voted for Trump and are realizing not only did he not deliver on his promises, but he's actually in bed with the very people attempting to screw us all over. And even the people like Megyn Kelly, who say Trump could nuke an entire country and they'd still vote for him, might not feel similarly about all the billionaires we are watching completely fuck us all over. Trump has the cult of personality to protect, and even he's had 3 attempts on his life. Maybe more, I've lost count. These billionaires don't stand a chance. They're fucking us over, and they have horrific personalities, just like absolutely putrid and deeply unlikable. That's a bad combo, especially when faced with the likes of Zohran Mamdani, a man so warm and charming, even Trump himself was like, hey, I like this guy. So the handsome, young, likable, democratic socialist guy is now naming billionaires by name and saying, hey, we're gonna tax you. And the people are rightfully realizing who to direct their anger towards. And the stories they've been telling us for decades, that they deserve their wealth and if you just work hard enough, you can be wealthy too, is not working anymore because we see how infrequently that works for people. And everyday people have to work multiple jobs just to make ends meet and are still spending most of their income on housing, if they have any housing at all, and then Trump starts a war and oil prices start climbing, so people can't even get to their multiple jobs without spending all their income on the gas to get them there. And people are terrified because they're one missed paycheck away from living on the street.
Yeah, Jai, you see the actual impacts of the dry spell.
Just to pay for the basics and stay afloat. And people can't go do anything anymore because billionaires and private equity have commodified literally everything, so you have to pay to exist. There's not a lot to live for a lot of people. There's not a lot to lose. And that anger and that desperation is going to boil up and has to have an outlet somewhere. And we're seeing a lot of that activity in New York City, which I think makes sense. It's a place where every class lives within very close proximity to each other, separated by a few city blocks. From those barely making minimum wage, those without houses, to those buying $238 million second homes. And Zohran Mamdani provides a constructive outlet for that anger that could genuinely improve millions of people's lives in the city without resorting to violence. But if the billionaires refuse to play ball with him, if they continue to dig in their heels, if they continue to make absolutely asinine statements like that tax the rich is akin to a racist epithet, if they deny the people their constructive outlet for their anger and frustration, well, it's got to go somewhere. And I don't condone violence. I am not encouraging it. I am a pacifist. This is just common sense at this point. What else do you think could possibly happen? When people get uncomfortable enough, they fight back. It's just a question of how much discomfort it takes for violence to be the only plausible solution that people can see. And we are already seeing some individual people come to that conclusion for themselves. We're not there yet on the popular front. The people still want peaceable reform. Those of us who were here in Minneapolis this winter, we didn't see violent protesters rise up and bring out the guillotines, despite what Fox News would have you believe. We saw groups of neighbors coming together and loving each other and demanding better from our leadership. We watched them go around government, operate without government's help, operate in spite of the government to provide the services to our neighbors that the government should be providing. We created systems outside the government in order to support one another, and it was really beautiful to witness. The only violence we saw here in Minneapolis was violence perpetrated by the state. But that was before the latest conflict with Iran. That was just 1 year into this second Trump term. What will it look like if Trump makes good on his promises to send in ICE to New York City to crack down on immigration there like they did in Minneapolis, where the pressure cooker is already turned up to 11 and where you don't have the cultural niceties of the Midwest to fall back on? I lived in New York and Boston. They don't fuck around out there. What does it look like if Trump makes good on his threat to send ICE or the troops or some other armed group to patrol our polling places in November when we've had 6 more months of anger and cost increases and pressure mounting? The moderate stance at this point is increased taxation. They should be glad all we want is taxation and not revenge. It might not stay that way for long. Okay, so what do these tax solutions look like? What would actually move the needle? And will increased taxation lead to the great millionaire exodus that's always threatened in places like New York City every time taxes are increased? Mamdani's proposed taxation of second homes, valued over $5 million, would raise about $500 million for New York City. That's a large sum of money, but it's just a drop in the bucket compared to the roughly $80 billion in property taxes that New York City collects every year. And while it has a lot of rich people up in a tizzy, the reality reality is that wealthy people don't move and aren't as transient as they want us all to believe. Tax flight is absolutely real. People do move to avoid taxes, but according to CNN, only about 15% of millionaires who move actually end up with a lower tax bill. And the social connections that wealthy people depend upon to create, maintain, and grow their wealth have a far greater impact on their choice to move. And a tax in New York City is not going to drastically change the draw of New York City. On top of that, the people that do actually leave major metropolitan areas in droves are young families who find the affordability crisis too much to bear, so they move away to find a cheaper cost of living. Addressing the affordability crisis, which Mamdani aims to do, would likely reduce overall flight from the city, not make it worse. Ken Griffin, the owner of the $238 million penthouse Mamdani pointed out, has said that his investment company is going to back off of New York City and double down in Miami. Miami. Griffin is betting that he's going to convince New York finance bros to move to Miami. A website called efinancialcareers.com wrote an article about the potential move to Miami in which they interviewed various New York hedge fund managers. They did not sound convinced that a move to Miami would ever be on the table in the face of increased taxes, saying, quote, "It's full of nouveau riche types, the flashy, shallow financial crowd. The crime, homelessness, and smell of weed are too much to bear. There's a lot of poverty and high crime in Miami.
Not the smell
Ken Griffin
of
has
weed.
enough money to build himself a bubble. Not everyone can do that." With another saying, "Say I make $10 million a year. 55% of that goes in tax in New York. In Miami, I save 7% in state tax, but private schools are a must there, and the money I save goes on them. At the end of the day, I might save a few $100,000, but I'm in an isolated place miles from my family and network." And another saying, "With that crowd migrating to Miami, New York actually might get pleasant again." All in all, the potential tax on second homes in New York City impacts about 11,000 of all homes in the city, less than half of 1%, a drop in the bucket. Mamdani's other proposals would impact a handful more people, but moderate Democrat Mayor Kathy
I'm
Hochul
right there with
opposes
you on
them,
that.
so it's unclear if they'll get passed. He's pushing for raising income taxes on anyone earning over $1 million per year by 2 percentage points, from 3.88% to 5.88%. This would impact about 34,000 households, not many compared to the over 8 million total inhabitants of New York City, but studies show that the vast majority of economic spending happening in this country right now is being spent by the top 10%, so if you scare away those $1 million plus earning households, there'll be no one left in New York City to prop up the economy. But is that true? According to the New York Times, quote, "The mayor's office often points to research by the Fiscal Policy Institute, a left-leaning think tank, which found that wealthy residents of New York were less likely to move out of state than those in other income groups, and that they did not leave in large numbers after a major tax increase in 2021. City officials also highlight how wealthy residents are paying less federal taxes under President Trump's Big Beautiful Bill. Other states have raised income taxes on millionaires, including New Jersey in 2020 and Massachusetts in 2022, and did not see significant departures. In Massachusetts, lawmakers approved a 4% tax on incomes over $1 million, and revenue has exceeded expectations." The New York Times article goes on to say, quote, "Gabrielle Zuckman, an economist at the University of California, Berkeley, who appeared with Mr. Mamdani on tax day, said research clearly showed that the rich would not leave en masse. It is largely indeed a myth, and it's more than that. It's frankly almost propaganda," he said. "There's not a zero response, but it's very small." Economists think there's likely some point at which increased taxation becomes counterproductive, with one model finding that combined federal, state, and local income taxes at a rate of 66% is that threshold. Though, of course, the theory is untested. New York City's combined rate is roughly 51% for the richest residents. And of course, in the 60s, we had income tax rates of 90%. But of course, income taxes aren't the full story here, because so many of the wealthiest people in America, on paper, have zero income at all to tax. Instead, they live on their investments. They live on the debt that they're able to borrow against those investments. And that's where they're able to squirrel away and grow their wealth while paying very little for the benefit of living in the United States and profiting from the connections, the infrastructure, the education system, the labor extraction, and all the other ways they benefit from being here. The Washington Center for Equitable Growth growth has suggested that one way to close this loophole that the ultra-rich use, borrowing money based on their stock portfolio, thereby never having to pay capital gains tax because they're not technically selling anything, would be to levy a tax on those ultra-high net worth individuals every time they borrow against their stock portfolio as a form of realized income. If you're making an income, in this case in the form of debt, based on the value of your stocks, that should be considered a realized gain, and you should have to pay taxes on it. This would only apply to households with over $100 million in assets, and they estimate that this proposal would generate about $46 billion in income taxes over a decade. There are many other ways to close tax loopholes that allow the ultra-wealthy to avoid taxes. Requiring taxation of capital gains generally, not just when someone borrows against their assets, is also practiced in other countries around the world. There's also the many inheritance loopholes that have been purposely drawn into the probate laws by wealthy people and the lawyers who rely on them for a paycheck. For instance, adding a capital gains tax at death would mean that the estate of a wealthy person would pay tax on the capital gains the person realized during their lifetime and never pay taxes on. Currently, any capital gains that are never realized are erased at death. So if someone passes money onto their child, that child will only be taxed on realized capital gains after they inherited the money. So say if someone invests $10 and at the time of their death that $10 is now worth $100 and they pass that $100
Where is the
to their
supply
heir,
depot?
that heir only pays taxes on anything earned above $100. The $90 in unrealized capital gains goes completely and permanently untaxed. Then, of course, there are the wealth taxes being proposed in California and at the federal level by Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, which could tax either one time or regularly all the wealth of the wealthiest people in the country. At the federal level, they could also dramatically raise the federal minimum wage, which hasn't been touched in decades and currently sits at a criminal $7.25 per hour. Adjusted for inflation, it should sit around $30 per hour. Instituting a higher minimum wage would help protect against the most egregious wage theft, because no one becomes a billionaire without extracting wealth from workers by paying them less than what their labor earns. Ensuring that companies can't do this as egregiously would be a step towards tamping down on the incredible wealth gap in this country. All of these fixes are complex, but would actually start moving the country towards being able to regain the riches that the ultra-wealthy are siphoning off the value being produced in this country. And all of them, every single one of these suggestions, is the moderate option at this point. Nothing I have said is anything particularly new, innovative, or untested if you look elsewhere in the world. None of this is radical. Taxing the rich is a moderate stance to take. It is the final stop before revolution at this point, because people are desperate and fed up with it, and they know exactly who to blame for all of this. And because of the nature of campaign finance and lobbying in this country, there will be absolutely zero political will to do any of this, at least at the federal level, unless billionaires get on board too, because they're the ones that have our politicians in a chokehold, and what they want matters in a way nothing else does. Billionaires would be wise to support increased taxation. They should be glad all we want is fair taxation. I would prefer not to witness the alternative. If you watch all these videos and somehow aren't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. It's a great free way to help support this channel. To support my work further, please consider joining on YouTube, Substack, or Patreon to get all these episodes completely ad-free as well. Also,
cool, yeah, that's Leah Miller, and you know what? We did roundabout excellently. You know what? Let's pull the full stat screen here. This is going to be it for tonight, folks. Maybe I'll queue up and just take a quick taste of what the next level is, but probably going to be hitting that take care screen in just a moment here. Let's see. Let's save first. Make sure we get things on the memory card. Errand of Mercy. Oh yeah, because we've got to figure out if those Americans are in there. Oh, this is gonna be some sort of escort dickery like the first mission, eh? If this goes smooth, kudos to them, because that first mission, I wasn't too bothered. My dude didn't die. It wasn't an annoying reset thing. It was no Ashley from Resident Evil. But I am noticing the camera flashing red. So you know what? I'm just gonna hit it here. Y'all take care. I'll be back Thursday with more Conscript. I will definitely read more Awkward on the Western Front. I'll see y'all then.